along and joining us. This is a story where we've actually got a couple of things coming together here. So it's essentially two stories which have been sent to me many times over the weekend by viewers. Firstly, talking about this new drone gun, essentially, and really raising issues as far as counter drone jammers and that sort of thing. But also, of course, the flights that have happened over the US Games again recently, and here in the UK at festivals, etc., that type of thing. So we've had a lot of input from viewers on that. So you can always email me, Sean@geeksvana.com, with any stories that you want to talk about, or make any points about stories as well. And these two things have really come together for this live show, because it's something which I think that we've got an industry starting to crank itself up in the counter drone side of things, the SUAS side of things, where they're talking about how to deal with rogue drones and how to deal with illegal drone flights, etc., and that type of thing. And then of course we've got the hobby on the other side also wanting to deal with these people in the middle. So we've got these idiots, frankly, in the middle who are flying illegally, who are flying damaging our hobby. But we've got this situation again, and I just feel like something might be brewing in terms of something we need to be more aware of as a community and discuss as a community, as far as other ways to deal with things in terms of what the companies out there are sort of whispering in the ears of regulators and government, etc. So it's an important topic to discuss. Do tag me at Geeksvana in the chat if you want to raise a point on this, and we will run through those as well. Suas Exit says, still a solution in search of a problem. And hi, John Cupid, great to see you, one of our moderators and co-hosts. So yeah, as I say, so today we're going to be looking at the issue which keeps raising its head in various forms, and try and have a community discussion about how we actually deal with this issue. Too many times, the concepts and ideas that have come from regulators and industry have resulted in new rules and methods that are very unpopular with the drone hobby and the RC hobby as a wider pursuit. Today, I want to raise a few questions surrounding the world of counter drones and start a conversation with everybody within the community. So as I say, comment along in the live chat. If you're watching this on the replay, do let us know your thoughts in the comments below as well. I do read all of them and try to reply to as many as I can. Well, as many as the spam prize givers don't actually manage to comment on, which is a whole other frustration. The spam commenters are back on the channel at the moment, so if you do see anything, do check that it's from us. We will not inform anybody of winning any prizes in the comments, so if you see anything like that, it's 100% not from us. Geeksvana, myself, we're not on Telegram or anything else like that, so do keep an eye out for that. Sadly, it takes me away from actually answering people's comments, having to deal with all that nonsense, but there we go. So yes, so it seems that we are starting to get more of these reports where hobby consumer grade drones are being flown into things like sporting events, etc. And this of course brings mainstream attention, and not generally good mainstream attention either. The good thing is that it is seen as an annoyance, and no one's screaming out about excessive dangers anymore. I'm not necessarily seeing these news reports, certainly coming from the States at the moment, where we've had these drones recently flown over US sporting events, where they're talking about it being dangerous or anything. More of an annoyance, more of something which is really happening there. So we're not getting the excessive danger BS that we used to get attached to this story. But if a viable solution isn't found soon, then my fear is that we'll start seeing solutions thrust upon the hobby and the profession, once again seeking to control the misuse of drones, which we all know how that really tends to end. So I'm just going to start playing an example here, a short clip, just popping up on the bottom of your screen here for anybody who hasn't seen it, which is the footage that happened at a baseball game. Now, it's clearly we're not looking at a flight here where someone's actually looking to gain some kind of cinematic footage. They're not trying to get pictures of the of the stadium or anything else like that. The fact is, as you'll see when the drone comes down to normal level, that they're actually flying it very erratically and at a very, very low level. So it's clearly somebody having a bit of fun. Also, as the lights are on at the front there, I think that also means that it's actually not recording. So they're either screen recording with the RC or the RC Pro or something of that nature, if they're even recording it. So it doesn't seem to be presenting any particular danger beyond that, obviously, of a sub 250 gram drone striking someone. most people there on the field are obviously in safety gear, etc. Everybody seemed to be aware of it. So I don't think there's a danger to life or a danger to harm or anything else on that. And to be fair to the mainstream media, to be fair to the reporting on this, I don't think that's necessarily what people have been looking at. It's more an annoyance that's actually been happening over there. So really the key questions that I want to start discussing on this with you guys, the audience, is really how to prevent the issue being made bigger than it is, and really what the risk here is, but also how do we deal with it ongoing? How do we make this kind of situation disappear from the hobby, essentially, if we ever can? So clearly we're not talking about the use of drones in terms of terrorism or weaponized attacks, etc., that type of thing. That's obviously something outside the discussion, and it's something that is taken very seriously by those who seek to protect the public out there. Instead, we are talking about the use of hobby-grade drones to disrupt events like the US stadium flights, as I've just been mentioning, including one Premier League soccer game here over in the UK that was halted due to overflight by a DJI Mini, and the use of drones at things like festivals and events in general. It just seems to be something which is spiking an awful lot. Now, there's also a clip here from Dorset Police, which was released a few weeks ago, where police were actually dispatched to deal with a drone flyer at the beach flying during an air show. And the response from the drone pilot I found was actually quite interesting on this one.
Do now for you. No problem.
To grab it?
It's 249 grams. That is 240.
You need to land the drone immediately, sir, yeah?
I will do now for you. No problem.
Grab it? Uniform 10, the drone's just landing now, over.
249 grams.
Okay, you still need to land it.
Okay, I will do now.
Can I ask you to turn it off?
Yeah. I know you do now.
Do you understand that there's a no-fly zone in place? So there's a geo-fenced area where you're not allowed to fly drones because of the aeroplanes and the air helicopters.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah?
I know this, but I think I see the plates there, but I think it's not possible because the people have drones not allowed.
No,
this
so
is
you,
like toys.
Yeah, but regardless, sir, you commit a criminal offence by doing so.
This is not a professional drone. This is like toys.
But regardless, it's still a drone.
Okay, no problem.
Have you got any ID with you?
No, this is no need.
Have you got any identification with you?
Oh my.
Your identity.
So it's an interesting one, that, because again, with those two clips, we've obviously got two very different things. We've got somebody that is flying in that stadium like that. They really will know, unless their IQ level is extremely low, they know they shouldn't be making that flight. And then you've got somebody else who has been miseducated, misinformed as far as what the drone rules are. He believed because it was a toy drone sub 250 grams, it didn't matter. The fact that he was actually flying right in an air show FRZ. In fact, you could even hear the aircraft in the background, low-flying prop aircraft flying around in the background. So it seems like really the first answer to try and deal with both of those side of things is obviously to look at education. And that works relatively well, I feel, within the hobby, because people are actively searching for drone rule videos, etc., and they attend drone safety events and to learn more about how best to use their drone safely. But we have a level of drone user who will soon, if they don't already, outnumber the hobby or the professional user. And that is people who purchase a drone purely as a fun tool to have to get them a few pics at the beach, that type of thing, a video of a day out and with the family. The drone is now easy enough to fly and cheap enough to purchase that it's being used by people who see it as nothing more than another mobile phone, essentially, camera. You know, it's just another thing for them to use. It's another tool. It's something else they throw in their bag as they're heading out the door. So how do we educate those kind of users that aren't looking for the information? How do we reach them? That's going to be one of the challenges that we face as a hobby. in terms of preventing more drone rules being thrust on us, because if we have more and more users out there who are just either blatant rogue flies flying illegally, or we have people who are flying through the wrong education, because that chap clearly did something. He's had some kind of effort at seeing what he's supposed to do, but obviously got it completely wrong. Now, I've heard several things on this side of things as well, as far as how we should deal with this, and people saying, should we stop the drone being activated until they learn the rules on screen at a certain level? Do we, here in the UK, do we have them pass the flyer ID, or in the US, the trust certificate, before the drone will even turn on? Is there literature we can insist that gets included with each new drone purchase? These are all ideas that anyone who's been in the hobby, anyone that's been in the industry for a few years, will have heard many, many times. It helps it obviously in terms of new drones, and I don't necessarily dispute that it would be a terrible idea, but then of course you have the issue of the ever-growing used drone market as well, and how you reach those people, because many people are buying second-hand Mini 2s and Minis, etc., and Ottels, other brands do exist as well. Now the flights over the sporting events and the ignorance of the rules shown in the Dorset clip obviously shows that education, however great, will not entirely solve the issue. If people want to use drones in the wrong way, they're going to find a way to do it, and that's really part of the problem here, isn't it? So if the answer is not education entirely, should we therefore have the answer that the venue or the event who do not want otherwise potentially legal drone flight, because of course something like a stadium, you can be flying over it actually when there's no game on, and that flight is completely legal. So as and when they don't want that, should we therefore be looking to the events themselves to actually have counter drone services and technology present? Is this not an issue in terms of how do we stop the drone flyer in terms of education, in terms of regulation, that type of thing? But actually, do we look to the counter drone technology in terms of how we make that happen? And is that something which is down to the stadium themselves, down to the venue, the event, etc., to resource and deal with? So for sporting events in particular, should we actually start to also take the approach that many sporting events do over the fun thing of streakers or pitch invaders? See my eyes light up when I talk about streakers. Whereas much is done as possible to minimize the publicity given to the incident. So train the camera away and not even give them mention why there's actually a short delay. Take away that excitement of getting your drone on TV or wherever their odd motivation might be. But I think that might actually be something which, particularly for the stadium incursions like the Dodgers game one, I think that really is something which could probably be focused on in terms of perhaps minimizing it, because if they're not getting the attention, it's just, oh, we've got a short delay, ladies and gentlemen, and then the game stops, goes to advert, goes to back to the studio, whatever, and then comes back out again, which is what they've started doing over here with the Premier League, with pitch invaders, etc., to try and take away some of their fame, their 5 minutes of fame that they're trying to get. So the problems really, though, come when you have an industry of counter-drone technology providers vying to sell their tech as the answer. Now, there are some very specific and there are some excellent use cases for kinetic drone systems that look to knock the drone out of the sky or have it return to home and that type of thing. But thankfully, and quite frankly, quite rightly, we remain in a situation where world regulators and air users alike agree that taking control or physically stopping an aircraft isn't really a bad idea overall. And I think that's 100% where I stand as well. So when you look at headlines like the following one we're going to talk about in a second, where my new button is actually pressed for that one. So as the recent headlines push out, showing the latest product from a company called Dead Drone was always going to be getting a little bit of attention, especially as their wording suggests they'd like to see this technology developed even in civilian settings. Now, if I pop across to their main website away from this, you can see the previous version, which is one of the versions which they provide to the military. And again, their sort of drone defender in action video shows exactly the kind of thing that it will do. Now, this type of device is one that will defeat it by either bringing the drone to the ground or actually activating the return to home sensor. Now, I think we can all see, as is these fine individuals here dressed in their military equipment, etc., that in a combat zone, in a hot zone, you can see that there's huge benefits to having this kind of technology around, because of course there is all sorts of issues that frankly could happen. However, we now have this press release and this slightly smaller, funkier looking drone gun, essentially drone jammer, and the headline: Dead Drone launches new low collateral counter drone jammer for urban environments. So the new solution joins Dead Drone's successful Drone Defender jammer, which has sold over 700 precision jammers for military use in military scenarios. And actually on one of their sites, I think it's here, it does show that over 500 sold to the US Department of Defense, over 90 to other US other organizations, government agencies, and 80 internationally. And of course there are very narrow limits as far as the legal use of this type of equipment, and in fact you have to hold certain certifications in the States to even be able to get a demo of these things, frankly. So yeah, there is certainly coverage there. So as it says here, Dead Drone, the market leader in smart airspace security, today announced the launch of its next generation handheld mitigation system, the Dead Drone Defender. All one word, that's a very long word. Completing Dead Drone's end-to-end counter-drone solution, Dead Drone Defender reimagines mitigation technology by delivering a sleek, connected gun for targeted precision radio frequency jamming. Given its small, lightweight form factor and ease of use, Dead Drone Defender is the ideal counter-drone mitigation solution for civilian, state and local law enforcement in, again it says here, urban environments. Dead Drone is a proven leader in delivering precise, targeted mitigation technology to the market, and it does again talk about the fact that these are for civilian, state and local law enforcement in urban environments. And to me, that's part of the issue. I mean, tech specs wise, 7.5 pounds, 22 inches long. The Dead Drone Defender is one of the lightest and smallest precision jamming systems on the market. So really what they're looking to do here is they're looking to capture, go beyond the military, because of course they've now made this product, they've sold it a few hundred times to the US Department of Defense and other defense agencies, but that market's very small, and now they want to find a larger marketplace. And what I don't want to see happening when they're talking about this being used in urban environments, etc., is that this starts to become something that we consider for issues such as the two different options that we're looking at there. Really, there's actually another page I want to show as well, just very quickly, which is one which is published here by a company called Defend Solutions, before I move on to the next spot. Let me accept their cookies. And this talks about the different types of counter-drone technology, both in terms of jamming and in terms of actually getting involved in the physical way. And again, it shows a lot of the issues that things like kinetic solutions have. That obviously requires line of sight, lasers, the mitigation technology being actually using a high energy device, and obviously the key challenge there is accuracy affected by weather conditions. Electromagnetic pulse, EMPs, a key challenge there is significant collateral damage to electronics in the area. And GNSS spoofing, which can cause accidents, of course. Again, as we go through here, we seem to, even from a website which is effectively selling us on the idea of counter-drone technology, is very much talking to us about the issues and risks that each of these ones, particularly the kinetic versions, actually pose. So the other issue that I have here is that if you have this handheld gun and you're able to send that drone back to its return to home, which the idea of taking control of another aircraft is just on so many levels something which is incredibly wrong. None of that actually deals with the issue, in my opinion. The pilot who is flying in the manner to require the intervention is the thing that needs dealing with. Now, this is where I think the UK current policies and policies that I see in the stateside as well are actually working fairly well. Instead of these aggressive systems that seek to effectively shoot down the drone, drone tracking suites are deployed to track the movements of the drones and identify the pilot locations. Now, these systems can actually do so for many miles around an event without any interference with the drone or even the knowledge of the operator. So a legal flyer will actually have no idea that they're even being scanned, etc. Then if something's happening they're concerned about, or it's an illegal flight, etc., the information can then be passed on to the police, who can take immediate action to approach the pilot. Then you're dealing with both sides. You're not just creating a falling projectile or an aircraft that no longer being controlled. There's an obvious cost to this, but large events already work with police to do this. It happens often here in the UK. There are private companies that also offer the services that then work in conjunction with local police, etc. So I think that side of things kind of starts to work. And if you look at it from the point of view that perhaps it's the event, perhaps it's the stadium that needs to do something about this in terms of tracking these people, and then of course the local law enforcement following that up and ensuring that examples are made and ensuring that people get the idea here. And I'm not just talking about, you know, fines that aren't followed up and that type of thing, but things actually happening. Then I think we will see a reduction in this kind of thing happening. One point that was put to me quite a few times by a few of the viewers who sent me DMs on this story and messages, particularly the baseball issue, is whether or not remote ID would help. And my sort of thought process on that is not entirely, really. The type of remote ID that's being deployed in the US and which is coming to the EU is not network based, so which I think is actually quite right. So the status of the aircraft would not necessarily be known until it's actually very close to the event or the area. There is an obvious benefit when you're looking at a screen of drones locally to see the one without remote ID and therefore flying illegally, as this helps identify potentially nefarious drone use. The other issue I have with that is that the pilots, with pilot locations being included on particularly the US remote ID, it could be a perfectly normal hobbyist who's just deciding not to comply for their own safety. So right or wrong as that might be, it won't help identify necessarily the specific nefarious drone use as simple first impressions might lead you to think. So it really comes down to this situation really comes down to, and this argument comes down to, who should decide, who should come up with the solutions for this. And I feel like, as we've had with other things like the Gatwick drones that created FRZs here in the UK, and other big instances and other issues which have created rules, we have the danger here of the counter drone industry kind of telling us what's going to happen and kind of talking to government and that type of thing, and coming up with solutions that we aren't necessarily looking to actually see. So that's my 2-bit on this particular topic. Let's go head across to the chat as I get myself into the chat windows, and see what some of you are saying about this, because it is a topic which I think, again, we need to start looking at as a hobby, as a profession, frankly. Let me head right back up to the top here. Great to see you all in here. Thank you very much. Please, if you don't mind, if you're still watching the stream right now, there's over 100 people in here. Could you all head across and hit the like button? I would really appreciate it. It really does help the channel. And just having a look here. Legwork discussing the intro there, saying he needs a 3-minute intro to milk the udder song for all it's worth. Yes, indeed. Yes, and we have as I say, we do have a shortened version coming for that one. Hans, thank you very much for joining us. Have you heard about the drone observations over Norway's natural gas processing plant and more? 4 Russians arrested with sensitive data. Absolutely, yeah. And I think that we have to separate out, as I was saying earlier on, Hans, and it's a really good story to raise, actually, that I think as a community, we all fully understand and we fully concede that we need to have quite aggressive counter-drone technology in place, in the right places, sensitive infrastructure, and deployed under the right kinds of circumstances, which I think actually does happen far more than we realise, but it isn't necessarily something that we're all told about on a daily basis. John Coopy is there. He's asking, he wants to know where all the prizes he's won from me on Telegram are. He's waiting. Yeah, thank you for that. And XJet, his opening remark that SUAS is still a solution in search of a problem, in his honest opinion. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think part of the problem here, it's a bit like UAM and a bit like the sort of drone taxi side of things, that there's a lot of vaporware. There's a lot of companies selling a specific product that they've spent a long time developing, and they don't want to let go of it, frankly. So you end up having to deal with companies, having to deal with things, and then I think that actually detracts from the legitimate side of things, basically. Still seated drone pilot, hi, good to see you. Hope you're well, sir. Almost as silly as auditors. And Paul, I think I've got your name right, Paul, released a really good video today, actually, with his Air 2S, a very cinematic video. So head over to his channel, have a look at that, anybody that hasn't. And Steve Honor saying, good evening, first live stream that he's managed to catch. Well, welcome, Steve. I hope you're enjoying it. Wayne B said, let's drop a Mini 3 from 100 feet on your head, Geeksvana, and see how little damage it does. And I'm not for a moment suggesting that there is no danger, that there is no damage, that there is no issue from that point of view. We've seen pictures of the child that was struck by a sub 250 gram drone and got quite bad lacerations, etc., quite horrendous injuries, frankly, from an inappropriate drone flight. So I'm not suggesting that, but I'm also just really welcoming the fact that the press wasn't too besotted with the fact that, you know, drones are coming here to kill us, basically, and that type of thing. But there is always risk. I completely agree. The drone mentor, Matt, great to see you. I'm surprised no one at the match batted the thing out of the sky, which actually one of the presenters did actually raise that point, Matt. They did actually say someone needs to get a bat and a ball and take that thing down. And XJet saying, luckily that drone wasn't a slaughter bot, or the police would have been in big trouble. Yes. Oh, I see what you mean on the one on the beach. Yes, indeed. And the drone mentor again saying, you're never going to stop everyone, I guess, but does it not come down to educating people? And I agree with that. And obviously both of our careers and even yours so more than mine, Matt. This is Matt Williams, by the way, also of UAV Hub, Mr. MPW, his new project, the Drone Mentor. For anyone that doesn't know who the Drone Mentor is. And I do agree with that, but I think that this has to start going beyond education slightly and actually how we reach people. And I think that we need to look at different ways of reaching people in terms of, it's not just hobby flyers that we need to be speaking to now. I think it's a wider thing. And let me have a look else here. Rue's early retirement saying, no, they don't. Anyone can buy a drone without any training. Yeah, exactly. Which I think it's how you implement that, how you, because I often again hear this thing of, you know, we should have lots more documentation in the box. Well, it's hard enough to get people to read the manual when you know, a good 50-60% of people's inquiries on Facebook about how do you do something with the Mini 3 or how do you do X, Y, Z is actually in the manual. So I worry that leaflets, etc., documentation that's actually dropped inside of a box with a drone might not actually do anything, frankly. Mike Scott, Portsmouth, UK. Hi, thanks for joining us, Mike. I think the sub 250 drone should require flyer ID. At least the pilot would have some knowledge. I fly a DJI Mini 3 Pro, by the way. Thanks for that comment, Mike. It's something that I think is interesting because I'm not sure. I think the whole 250 gram thing and the Mini being released and that type of thing kind of went under the radar a little bit in terms of timing, because of course the rules that we've currently got adopted, the EU rules, are something which have been coming for a while, and so they didn't really realize that a sub 250 gram drone with a camera, therefore the privacy side of things, needs an operator ID but won't need a flyer ID. And I don't think they realized the popularity and just how much that would push the hobby to the sub 250 side of things. So I don't disagree with you. I think the flyer ID is a good idea. I think the flyer ID is an interesting one because I think it is really a box ticking exercise as well, and it is really, I see the flyer ID in its current form not necessarily, it is educational because it is giving you the basics, but I think it's more there for you to sign to say that you know what the rules are, which again I think is obviously a potentially very positive thing. But I think it could be, I think it could be something different personally. And Chris Hearn, hi Chris, good to see you. I retweeted on the Geeksvana Twitter feed earlier one of Chris's superb pictures of the Humber Bridge bringing in a few other sites, and it's a really great vista. Was it sunset, Chris? I'm not sure, but it was either sunrise or sunset. But it looks stunning. So head over to the Geeksvana Twitter if you don't already follow us to have a look at that wonderful picture. And Chris says, if you're intending to do it properly, you'd sit a Damara's test and get your flyer ID. Yeah, indeed. And I know so many people in the groups and on our Discord channel, etc., that have the sub 250 gram drones who actually say, I did go and get the flyer ID as well. I don't see a problem with it. And actually they do see a value. And XJet saying exactly what I said there. People don't even read the manual. So why would they read included safety information? And Dennis is saying maybe the weight is still too high, 249 gram. New people should only fly whoops under 100 grams. Yeah, I don't think that there's necessarily an issue with the sub 250. I could argue in some instances, actually, I think that 250 is too light, but I'm okay with it, personally speaking. And I think that it's an okay weight for people to start at. I think we just need to find ways of getting the information across, and in terms of both in terms of effective enforcement and effective use of passive counter drone solutions which already exist. We don't need these drone guns, etc., shooting our drones out of the sky and taking control of our drones. I don't think that's the way to go in terms of the wider hobby and the wider profession, personally, but I think it's okay from that point of view, because when you look at these drones, when you look at the Mini 3 Pro, it is, and you have it in hand, it is very, very light, and I personally think the risk is already at that kind of level. Trevor Fuss is saying Australia has a rule that any drones sold in this country must contain a drone rules information sheet. Yeah, and it's something which has been played with in a lot of places, actually, Trevor. And it's, again, I suppose if you put the leaflet in there and every 100 drone users, 10 or 15 of them read it and 5 of them take notice of it, then I suppose that's another 5 people educated, and so therefore it has a value. And Flying Low is saying maybe they shouldn't be able to buy a drone until providing the details proving you've got a flyer's ID. Yeah, and that would bring it back to obviously needing a flyer ID for all drones or something of that nature, wouldn't it? So there would have to be other legislation changes to make that work. But it's interesting because, again, as Matt, the drone mentor, said earlier, it's something which he suggested many, many years ago, and other people have suggested in terms of having something, the sort of horse before the door bolted type of scenario, and where that line is, where that point is, where you actually start to say to people, okay, you can't fly this drone until you've done X, Y, and Z, but also how you do that, because again, obviously there is the second-hand market as well. John Coopy, hi, good to see you. Whilst we've got John, I will just say this very quickly.
Sit down at the back, please. No pushing and shouting. XJet, Bruce, put that down. And who let John Coopy in here? I don't know, you can't take droners anywhere.
There you go, a warning to a special couple of members, a couple of our moderators, in fact, in the chat. So John Coopy says the Bengals game flyers were... the Bengals game flyers, yes, were very flippant. They mocked people in the comments on their YouTube video saying they wouldn't get in trouble. Yeah, which again is clearly, obviously, down to education, isn't it, John? Amanda's Adventures. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for joining us. We have a DJI Mini 2, have a flyer ID, an operator ID, and insurance. Should anything happen, I think you have to be responsible, as those things can slice you hard. Absolutely. And that's the kind of thing that I absolutely love, Amanda, is the responsible hobby, the responsible profession, the industry that's built around the drone hobby, etc. I think is fantastic. And I think that the vast majority of us are extremely responsible. Philadelphia Flyers aside, with their avatars, I think they are extremely responsible and want to conduct the hobby the right way, and that's fantastic. It's excellent work, but we need to start reaching people beyond us, beyond those that will sit in YouTube and sit and Google what they need to be doing. And Chris Hearn saying, no matter how big your hammer is, you can't knock common sense into stupid people. Well, there is that argument, unfortunately. Hawkwind Drones, who is this we? Nobody let me run the FAA this week. Yes, indeed. Well, there are committees that have alleged hobby representatives who advise the FAA. So perhaps there is opportunities from that point of view. And XJet saying, if there weren't idiots with drones, the rest of us wouldn't look nearly so clever. Yeah. Ian Simpson's asking, what about hard auto geofence? And that's an interesting one, because obviously DJI felt, whatever argument you have regarding DJI geofencing, it's inaccurate often, and can cause issues all of its own. But an effective geofence system that's actually on the drone, I think, is interesting. Although I personally worry that takes some responsibility away from the pilot, from the user, as it were. So, but it's an interesting one, and again, one that obviously DJI have heavily invested into. Flatlands Aerial Photography saying the problem is that people just think the rules don't apply to them, or simply don't care because nobody seems to be enforcing the rules. And I have a lot of time for that comment, Flatlands Aerial Photography. Thanks for joining us. From the point of view that when you look in some of the groups, and sort of people will be sort of, oh, no drone police in here, etc., and that type of thing, which I'm absolutely fine with. Rules of groups are rules of groups, but the way that some people do seem to just completely ignore some of the rules is absolutely extraordinary. And then, of course, it's the same people that often will complain about how hard the rules are. Richard Warwick saying stadiums have security to keep out non-ticket holders and other disruptive people. Absolutely, Richard. Indeed. And events at stadiums, etc., there's huge investment in security, as you're saying, about non-ticket holders, other disruptive people. They have very careful shepherding of cars in the car parks and barriers to stop issues with cars and that type of thing occurring and things. And there's all these different types of security. And I feel that this might just have to start being something which these events, these stadiums, these companies have to start stepping up and realizing is something that they just need to deal with, rather than it necessarily being something that the rest of us in our drone hobby have to be hit over the head to deal with. Tim Bray is saying, in Australia, you mean they're sold with a CASA pamphlet in the box, explain the rules. Yeah, as one of our other viewers was saying there as well. Chris FPV, like I always said, DJI stuff, camera drones are the problem, as anyone can fly them without any piloting skills, unlike FPV homemade acro quads. Yeah, and this is part of the issue, Chris, I think, as well, that as time rolls on, we are getting an ever increasingly easier to use type of system. Even with the fact of things like the Litchi app now, that you can now set. Sorry, I cringe when I think of people using the Litchi app with the Mini 2 with no sensors. But anyway, where they can set waypoints and the drone will literally fly itself and capture the mission that you want. So I think that is part of the issue, but it's part of the issue that we have to think about, because it's something that we all have to deal with as a hobby. Chris Hearn, I have a GVC, A2 CFC, insurance, and mainly a hobbyist, but occasionally use it for work, so therefore need the paperwork. Excellent. Yeah, and I know that you are an extremely conscientious drone pilot, Chris. We still need to talk, actually. We were going to have a Zoom call at one point to talk about something, but yeah, we should do that at some point. I haven't forgotten you. And I remember every time I see your name. XJet says the deluxe version of this SUAS also launches an anti-personnel missile at the operator. Thanks, SRID. Well, and that's part of it, isn't it? Really, we need to see where the line is, where sensible counter drone technology in terms of, I think, passive side of things, and then be able to do something. Of course, as I say, in particularly sensitive infrastructure, in particular issues. I don't want to say terrorism too much on the stream so I don't get demonetized, but in those kind of issues, in the extreme side of the criminality, we of course do need these kind of systems, and I'm sure they exist in every Western government, frankly. And yes, no, illegal to use according to the FCC, as XJet's saying there. And XJet also saying, someone remind me, what was the problem again? How many people injured, killed? How much property was destroyed by recreational drones in the USA? Yeah, and we can use that argument to an extent, but what I also want to do is make sure that when we have these discussions, we live in the reality of things, that we can't just scream at the machine. We can't just scream at the regulator and the government. There isn't a problem. It's a perfectly safe hobby, etc. Because it is an argument that isn't really happening. It's not really an argument that is there to win as such, in my opinion. So we have to deal with the reality of the situation. But yeah, I mean, the point you make is valid. Lindsay Hayes, hi Lindsay, great to see you, one of our long-term viewers of the channel. I come straight from a viewpoint where drone controlling is forbidden. A pilot was flying a Mavic 3 and a film crew was flying a Matrice over a triple SI. Yeah, not good. And you know, it has to, a large part of it does have to come down to competency of the pilot themselves. XJet selling a SUAS device. It's a very large sign that says, please go away, drone. It's every bit as effective as dead drone stuff. There you go. That's, I couldn't possibly agree or disagree with that particular comment. Chucky Whiskers says, and good to see, I haven't seen you in the chat before, Chucky. Thanks for joining us. I hate the idea of regulation. I'll always fight new restrictive regulations in every way possible. And yeah, you know, and we are certainly the hobby of the regulation, aren't we? We are the hobby that has been hit hardest of any of the hobbies out there, really, where you know, our movements are now heavily prescribed, frankly. So it's you'll get a lot of sympathy for that particular feeling and sentiment in this hobby for sure. And John Cooper says remote ID doesn't totally solve the problem in real time, and we're going to have a plethora of used drones without it for years to come. Absolutely, John, and an awful lot of non-compliance as well, frankly. And Chris is saying the police could be the best thing on the spot, arrest them if needs be and fine them, make sure plot is up to speed on the latest regs though. Yeah, indeed. And I think the operations that I've been aware of in the past where we've had guests on who run those type of companies, etc., they often work with units which are briefed on in the area and that type of thing. I know that's happened in the States as well. So yes, so that is obviously certainly very key. And droning Western Australia from a security perspective, I think this could be very effective, especially around high value targets. And I think that the use case is fine. And I've been saying I'm okay with it is really the wrong thing to say, but I'm okay with the very aggressive forms of counter drone tech, such as these guns, etc., if they're used in the right context, as their video showed with the military personnel using them, that type of thing. 100%. But I think they need to be used in the right kind of way, frankly. Yeah, and Bill Gray says, why are we trying to reinvent the wheel when the wheel is already working? It's impossible to fly a drone over the USA White House because of the technology used. Yeah, well, indeed. But again, it's whether or not that aggressive technology should be permeated out into the wider public. The Holy Now attitude here is amazing. Drone snobbery at an all-time high from its starts. Who's coming across like that at its starts? I'd be very interested to know. I think that all views are welcome on this channel. It's everybody approaches this hobby and this profession from a very different angle, and we all come together to try and look at solutions, frankly. Lindsay Hayes saying, does anti-drone kit work? I just saw a video of a Russian trying to use one in Ukraine, but it still dropped a nade on him. Yeah, and that's part of, on that article, which I will link in the description after the show, that's part of the issue that one of the companies raised as far as the kinetic side of things, that actually there's so many factors that stop these things working, that the weather, the accuracy of the shot, that type of thing, that actually it isn't something which should be relied upon, frankly. So yeah, 100% on that one, that I don't know if the aggressive stuff works. Where, of course, the passive stuff, they actually just track the drone and the drone operator position, can work particularly effectively. So Rue's early retirements, I love that username, by the way, Rue. Another problem is that only the idiots get fame, and then if it's not them but the drone, making other idiots think it's great fun and attempting to try it. And I agree with that, Rue, and I got that feeling, I got that impression with the Dodgers game flight in particular, where the way the drone was sort of zipping around and everything else like that, it felt like an attention one, which is why I think what my suggestion earlier on, where I think it would be good to see the TV, the presenters, etc., pay less attention to it, a bit like they do with the pitch invaders and that type of thing in soccer games. I think that could actually be quite effective to end that, because if they're not going to get the publicity, it might stop that. And Tazzy says, hi Tazzy, good to see you. I don't want to see more restrictions, but I would want to see the regs enforced more than they are. Perhaps seeing some of these auditors prosecuted would discourage their misinformed followers. And it's, yeah, I mean, that's a whole can of worms, isn't it, Tazzy, in terms of how that can, how to effectively deal with that kind of situation, especially when we're talking about, you know, edited entertainment that's being put out there. But yes, I do agree. You do end up with misinformed followers. I 100% agree with that one. Carl B, or at least show the outcome, i.e. heavy fine, etc. Yeah, I agree with that. But again, we need to have these punishments start to happen, basically, for that to happen as well. Mark's Escapades, hi Mark. Make the punishment for breaking the drone rules the death sentence. That'll teach them. Yes, indeed. We need some balance as well, don't we? So we need to ensure that these, whatever does happen, is in keeping with the situation, in keeping with the crime. So, as I say, this is a topic that we as a community and a professional users of drones, we need to address it, and we need to actively discuss it to find the solutions and concepts that will avoid the wrong people getting to decide more regulations and potentially suit their profits, frankly, rather than something that is genuinely focused on safety, genuinely focused on education. And I think we need to start seeing that. I think we need to start seeing those conversations start to happen. So hopefully that's something that this kind of conversation will start off, frankly. So there we have it. That is tonight's show. Thank you very much, and thank you for getting involved in the chat. If you're watching the replay, do comment below as well, so let us know what you think. Again, on your way out of the live stream, do hit the like button, and yeah, I will see you next time on Geeksvana Live. We've got some very interesting topics coming up very soon, including a rather interesting Microdrone 4 update, which I'm looking forward to bringing you. We're not going to drop that story until we do get some kind of end resolution to it, but thank you again, everyone, for joining us on Geeksvana Live, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.